Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar event. My name is Joshua. I'm going to be your presenter today. It is promptly 1:15 Eastern Time, at least according to my PC. Welcome to today's webinar event. We're here to talk about a very specific topic as it relates to coronavirus response, COVID-19 response, as mandated by the federal government for employees and payroll specifically. Before we get started on that, we're here for the next 20 minutes or so, about 1:35 Eastern Time. I'm going to try to keep this within that time frame. It may go a little bit longer. We'll see, but we're not going to end things right away. We're going to be happy to stick around and answer questions for you. We are recording today's webinar event. It will be produced and made available on our website sometime here within the next 24 to 48 hours, if not sooner. Probably the most important part of today's webinar event that I can share with you today is there is a handout. So if you expand the handouts portion of the webinar control panel, you will see the document that we are using as the basis for the webinar event today. It's called Payroll Example of COVID Sick Pay Sick FMLA.pdf. Okay, that is all we are really going to be looking at today. Okay, so it's very important that you either open that, expand it, print it, or open it and save it. All right, because we're going to be looking exclusively at that document today. We're not even going to open payroll today. We're not going to open church windows. We are simply looking at the information as it pertains to that document. If for any reason you are unable to access that, or you can't print it, or what have you, after the webinar, please contact us through support via email or via telephone, and we'll be happy to email or send that to you a different way. Okay? Very, very important that this document, that you have access to it. Otherwise, what you're going to be seeing is just going to be looking at it. You're not going to understand it. You're not going to have it to reference back to. In addition to the fact that this is probably going to be a document we're going to refer back to and revisit again on future Church Windows webinar events, okay? So what I mean by that is we've got a series of webinars that we have scheduled between now and through the end of the month of June that are going to be dealing with all of the different components that make up the really vast puzzle of legislation that the government has passed that is being established to help the country deal with the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic, okay? We are strictly dealing with the sick pay FMLA portion of that legislation in today's webinar event, okay? So what we're hoping is you're going to join us today, and then you're going to join us for the COVID-19 portion of that next week, and then for the other webinar events that are later on in the month, and certainly by the end of the month with regards to things like the new 941 and what have you. Unfortunately, there's just all of this stuff is evolving, and so it's kind of an ever-changing thing, and so, evolving every day, every week. And so we're going to be having a series of these events that are going to hopefully offer some clarity for you and your employees and the church with regards to how all of this legislation impacts you, okay? All right, so first of all, when you open up the document, the very first pages you're going to see here is this one called Employee Rights. Folks, this is a poster, okay? This is, we scroll down the page, a little bit down the page here, we're going to see right down at the very bottom, it says, let me get out my highlighter here, down here in the bottom left, United States Department of Labor, okay? This is a poster that you should be posting somewhere, wherever you post your other state and federal legislation with regards to labor requirements and labor, minimum wage and things like that are all, you hopefully have somewhere in your offices. We recommend strongly suggest that you print this and you post this poster up for your employees to see, okay? Very, very important, all right? You should be, if you can't print it this way, then go right to the Department of Labor and you can print it directly from their website, from there as well, okay? So the example that we're presenting today is simply a part of what we're going to be building on in future webinars that, again, encompasses other parts of that legislation, this vast amount of legislation that our lawmakers are working on and constantly changing and evolving, okay? We are, again, just focusing on sick pay and FMLA piece today, okay? One of the other parts of this that's really, really, really important, okay? Well, let's go through this first. This is what this document is basically telling us, okay? This all pertains to strictly sick leave and Family Medical Leave Act requirements, okay? This has nothing to do with PPP. We are going to be dealing with literally nothing to do with PPP today at all, okay? The only thing I'm going to reference for PPP today is the time frame in relationship to FMLA sick leave, okay? As we scroll down this document, one of the things I want to point out is that sick leave FMLA requirements are, this is all eligible for, where is it here? It's somewhere on here. It's for from April 1st to December 31st of, oh, there it is. It's near the top. I'm so sorry. So right here, it says these provisions will apply from April 1st of 2020 to December 31st of 2021, okay? So unlike PPP, which up until apparently last night, there's been some changes in the legislation, was 8 weeks from the date that the money was received. It apparently, as of some new changes in government that we're still kind of waiting on information about, was initially 8 weeks. It's now been expanded to 24. But again, it's important to understand that timelines on these different programs are really important and impactful, okay? So everything that we're dealing with today is from April 1st to December 31st of 2020. So a different time frame than PPP at this point, okay? First of all, let's talk about the 3 paid leave entitlements. There are 3 parts, okay? So sick pay is up to 80 hours or 2 weeks, or for part-time employees up to a 2-week equivalent of paid sick leave based on the higher of their regular pay rate or the applicable state or federal minimum wage paid, okay? 3 parts are, 1, 100% of, right here, number 1 right here, 100% of qualifying reasons of the 3 below, and that's the listed 3 down here at the bottom, okay? Typically, that would be someone who is directly impacted by COVID-19, either through having contracted the COVID-19 virus itself, or they've been advised by a healthcare provider. And again, when I scroll down, let me get back to my regular drawing tool here, folks. Okay, let's scroll down a little bit and try to see if we can't get this all captured in one screen. So right here is subject to federal or state, local quarantine or isolation related to COVID-19, or has been advised by a healthcare provider to be self-quarantine related to COVID-19, or is experiencing COVID-19 symptoms and is seeking a medical diagnosis. So again, someone who is directly impacted by COVID-19. That person is, those folks who meet one of those 3 criteria are eligible to up to $511 per day or $5,110 total for the qualifying period. So in this case, for 2 weeks, okay? The second option would be 2/3 of qualifying reasons for number 4, which is basically caring for an individual subject to an order described in Section 1, or is self-quarantined in section item number 2, okay? So, but even then, number 2 is 2/3 of qualifying for reason number 4, 4 and 6, excuse me, and only up to $200 daily or $2,000, okay? But in either case, both of those scenarios are people that have been impacted by COVID-19 directly in one way, shape, or form, okay? The third option here, the third one down, is now our FMLA qualification, which is, I'm not sure if it's 10 weeks or 12 weeks of paid sick leave and expanded medical leave or up to $200 daily, or $10,000, $12,000 total. But again, in the care of their child whose school or place of care is closed. Okay, that's the true FMLA portion of this qualification that we have to understand. Okay, FMLA exclusively applies to a parent having to care for a child who is not able to go to their standard care provider, whether it be a school or daycare or what have you, as a result of COVID-19, as a direct relationship to a closure. Okay, really, really important. The two top portions are related to sick pay. The third option here, the third bullet point, let me erase my other previous drawings here and go back to our right up here. So here we've got number 1, number 2, and number 3, the bullet points there right here. So we've got 1, 2, and 3, okay? Really important to understand those distinctions because it all then boils down to our record keeping, okay? So as we, again, and we're not going to talk about the enforcement further down the page here per se. We're really just more worried about the qualifications and the requirements as it relates to that. That's really, it's really the top portion above these boxes is really what's important here, okay? So as we scroll further down, okay, those are our 3 things that we're dealing with, or 3 portions of the legislation that we're dealing with today in terms of how it deals with our employees, okay? So as we scroll down our page here and we look at our second page of our document, there are some important lines in time and events and occurrences which impact how this then winds up affecting our employees and us as the employer, okay? So what we're doing here today, what we've done is we've kind of painted some scenarios, and we're using the state of Ohio because that's where we're based, okay, as our guidelines for that. You will absolutely want to check with your state and find out when their points in time occurred for similar type of important dates that were announced in your state. They may be different, okay? And what I'm talking about is right here, this section right here where it says important dates announced by the state of Ohio, okay? So here, just to kind of tell you, this is where they occurred for us, was that on March 9th, the state of emergency was declared for the state of Ohio. March 16th, schools closed. All of these become very, these are points in time or facts that occurred that affected all of our employees, okay? Schools closed. Clearly then at that point, employees were affected as it regards to FMLA, okay? March 22nd, our stay-at-home order was announced, okay? Then another 9 days later, childcare closed. So any employees whose employees were home, their kids were home after schools closed, they became eligible for FMLA benefits on March 16th. Those whose child care were still open until the 25th, they don't qualify until March 25th. Does that make sense? Okay. So, and then it shows here then on May 31st, the child care, state of Ohio may reopen. So again, you need to find out from your state when these qualifying dates occurred, because that all impacts, again, when maybe FMLA benefits kick in for an employee and when they're eligible to be able to take those. This is all super important with regards to record-keeping purposes, okay? Now, that's just states qualifying events, okay? That's when events occurred in the states where they were announced, where things occurred where employees maybe became eligible, okay? Then another line is drawn here because another series of events occurred with regards to our employees as they pertained to our COVID-19 itself, okay? And that's what we're going to talk about next, is when we scroll down here, it says important dates for the church include, okay? Now, again, these are all much based on events as they occurred for within respective pay periods or pay dates as the case may occur. Folks, this is incredibly complex, okay, which is why we're recommending that you keep spreadsheets available and we're going to show some of this at the very end in terms of when and how they occurred, so you can go back and try to, without having to go back and try to recreate it, that you can build these into your event tracking immediately not having to go back and try to recreate it. So let's talk about that. So we've got a pay period basically for a paycheck that's distributed on April 10th that was for time worked through April 3rd, okay? So we've got some events that occurred for that, okay? And you're going to go back and you're going to download this document. You can go back and review some of this afterwards. So our line is drawn right here for our first pay period. So here we've got an employee who takes some leave of absence due to closure from school. Okay, right up there, March 6th, our school closed. So we've got an employee who's directly impacted by that. March 22nd, all youth activities at the church were suspended for further notice. So if the church, if kids were working and staying at the church for whatever events and they're not there, again, folks are impacted. People are impacted by that. March 22nd shows the church announced it will conduct remote and parking lot services until further notice. And finally, on April 2nd, the church becomes a drive-through distribution point for food supplies, okay? That's just one pay period. We've got other pay periods afterwards that are also then impacting that. So what this means is when we scroll further down now and we're looking at our pay period again, and I'm encouraging you to keep looking at what we're seeing here and what we've created is, let me get out my highlighter again. Again, pay period April 3rd, pay period ended April 3rd for a pay date of April 10th. Everyone's being pretty much paid regularly at this point, okay? So again, 2/3 of daily pay rate, and I'm looking at these column headers across the page here. We've got COVID-19 sick pay maximum $511, and we got COVID sick pay max $200, and we got COVID-19 FMLA, and then PPP wages, and then other non-PPP wages. Well, we notice here that at the very beginning of the pandemic, before things began to lock down, very little was beginning to show up in these columns because employees were not highly impacted by this, okay? Again, Sue, whose child was then at home, starting for a portion of this pay period, now begins to show a $500 amount showing up because she was affected by having to stay at home and care for a child who was not able to go to school or didn't have child care. And so she opted to have part of her sick pay applied during that first period because it fell within the qualifying period. Okay? So again, hers was $200 or 2/3 of her daily rate. So basically, $200, a day and a half day. What does it say here? It's saying that shows Sue qualifies for 3 days of sick pay at 2/3 of her daily rate, which equates to $500. Okay. She also then had other regular wages of $2,000 totaling $500. Okay. As we go back up to our example further up the page, here, let me get back to my normal drawing tool, folks. Sorry, we're going to run a little bit long. Here, we're now going to talk about how then other things occurred in the next pay period that showed where then employees now become a little more heavily impacted by the COVID-19 events. Okay, so when we look at April 6th and beyond, let me try to get up there. Our senior pastor, Larry, returns from a mission trip and must quarantine for 14 days. He was out of the country. He had to quarantine. Again, an event. Church receives a PPP loan for $78,500. Again, another event that impacts how folks' pay is going to be recorded and reported. April 8th, another event on that same day. Since the church received the loan, it's opted to pay all of its employees their full salaries. Again, a choice. Okay? Then 4 days later, after returning from his trip, our pastor, Higgins, is now diagnosed as having actually contracted COVID-19. So what does that do? That takes his 14-day quarantine period and expands it out 14 days from the date of diagnosis. Okay? Again, lots and lots of events are occurring here in terms of how they impact our employees. April 12th, one of our employees, Jerry Williams, is caring for his parents who have symptoms of COVID-19, okay? They've not necessarily contracted it or been confirmed, but he's having to now not work or not being able to work because he has to care for folks who are quarantining based on the effects of risk or not wanting to spread COVID-19. You see how all of these events impact our employees, okay? But if we kind of go scroll down again, I'm not going to go through all of those events, but each one of them, and now when we're looking at our next pay period after that, so we're now moving into our pay period that ended on April 17th. Okay, I'm talking about this one right here for a pay date a week later, 7/24. Well, Larry, again, let me scroll up here, is now actually is qualifying for some of that 10-day sick time COVID-19 at the max of 511. Okay, so all of this stuff has to be calculated into their pay. Notice now, and again, what we're looking at here is we're not looking at anything here for PPP wages. We're basically looking at everything over here, okay? Don't look here, look here. So again, Larry's been impacted by COVID-19 up to 511 max pay, okay? Jerry Williams has taken 3 days, or what is it there, 2 or 3 days of that, caring for 2/3 of his pay for 5 days, I'm sorry. So his pay rate at 5 days is $525. And again, yes, some of this does apply to PPP, but we're not going to talk about that today, okay? But you have to do these calculations, and we strongly recommend, and so again, I'm not going to really talk about it much more than this, folks. We're kind of getting you headed in the right direction in terms of how important, I can't stress the importance of making sure you're notating these events, both from state announcements and from personal qualifying events for employees. The better records you keep on these for the employees and these qualifying events, the easier it is going to be for you to determine which one of these categories these employees then qualified for and for how much, okay? I think we've even gone so far as to, on our website, when we go to churchwindows.com, go to the COVID-19 resources page here to the upper right, and we go down here. I think if we go right here, it goes down to the wages breakdown spreadsheet. This actually will open in Excel, and this is here for you folks to download at any time, okay? Let me see if I can bring that up. Where is it? Let me try it again. Sorry. I want to open it. Sorry, Excel. That's what I meant. My fault. Little distracted here. So notice here, we're giving you the opportunity. We're putting this Excel file out here for you folks to be able to recreate this information right here in Excel. Put in your employee names. Put in their daily rate. Okay. Do the add the column for the. We might even put another one out here that shows the 2/3 rate column. But right here, it allows you to put in. Here's how much, their max 511 is, their max 200, their FMLA totals, and their PPP wages, okay? I think we're going to put an amended document out here with regards to this. Yeah, and folks, again, just sorry to sort of make this clear finally here. Again, we maybe should have allotted a little more time for this webinar event today. I apologize. Is that all of this money that the Department of Labor, this sick leave FMLA money is, we're going to be explaining more about how this is going to be reimbursed in the June 25th webinar event, okay? The church is going to receive these reimbursements for these monies per this new, the FF, whatever the name of the act is, the FFCRA Act itself here is all going to be wound up reimbursed, but it's all going to be dealt with on the 941 form that's going to be due, and we don't even have that yet, okay? And so we are, again, this is just part of a series, folks, so we're going to try to build on this throughout the course of the month so you get a clearer picture. But download and get that wage and breakdown sheet here and begin filling that in and populating that with the information, okay?